In 1981, in San Francisco, Chris is struggling to make a living as a salesman of portable bone density scanners. Each morning, he drops off his son, Junior, at daycare, and then goes on a daily tour of hospitals in the city to promote and sell the scanners. While commuting on the bus, he frequently encounters a peculiar homeless person who refers to the scanner as a time machine. On occasions when Chris needs more time to make a potential sale, he relies on his wife, Linda, to pick up their son. This situation often frustrates Linda, as she already works long hours with double shifts to support the entire family. The following morning, during his usual sales rounds, he encounters a man stepping out of a luxurious sports car. Curious, Chris inquires about the man's profession, and the man reveals that he is a stockbroker. Surprisingly, the man shares that a college education is not a strict requirement for the job. Being skilled with numbers and good with people is what matters. Feeling motivated, Chris decides to apply for a position as a stockbroker. He informs Linda about his plan, stating that he will be late in the evening, as he intends to stop by the office to pursue this new opportunity. Linda finds Chris's ambition of becoming a stockbroker ridiculous, and mocks his seemingly unrealistic dream. Undeterred by Linda's skepticism, Chris decides to apply for a job at a brokerage firm, where only 1 out of 20 applicants gets hired every 6 months. To make a good impression, he leaves the scanner with a hippie girl on the street, giving her some money to watch over it. However, as he is inside the firm learning about the job details and getting the application, he notices that the girl is making off with the scanner. Unfortunately, she escapes by boarding a train. The next day, Chris assures Linda that he will sell the scanner, so they won't have to deal with it anymore. However, before doing so, he goes to the firm to submit the filled-up job application. To create a favorable impression, he personally delivers it to Jay, the resource department manager, and shares some details about himself. Later on, Chris spots the hippie girl and her partner passing by with the scanner he desperately needs to sell. Realizing he had spent his entire life savings on these scanners, which turned out to be considered unnecessary luxuries by doctors and hospitals, Chris becomes furious. He chases after the couple and finally manages to corner them on a bus, successfully retrieving the scanner. However, upon returning home, Chris realizes that instead of having sold the original scanner, he now has 2 of them. Despite it being Junior's birthday, Linda feels disappointed and let down by Chris's actions. They had sacrificed some money to buy Junior a basketball to keep him happy, but Linda couldn't ignore her anger at Chris's irresponsibility. A month later, Chris goes to see Jay to inquire about his job application, but Jay is too preoccupied to give him a proper answer. Trying to impress Jay again, Chris discusses his skills while Jay struggles with solving a Rubik's Cube. In frustration, Chris takes the cube from Jay and solves it just in time for the cab's arrival. However, this act leaves Chris without money to pay for the fare, so he gets off at a stop and runs away, chased by the taxi driver. As he rushes into the train station, the train's doors close on his hand, causing him to drop the scanner. This incident causes a significant delay in Chris's plans, leading him to call Linda to apologize. Unfortunately, Linda has had enough of his actions. She missed her shift to pick up Junior, and they needed that money. In her anger and frustration, Linda decides to leave with Junior, taking all her belongings with her. Devastated by this turn of events, Chris rushes back to his house, but it's too late. Linda and Junior are already gone. At that moment, Chris receives a call from Jay, who instructs him to write down his secretary's number to arrange an interview for the next day. The next morning, Chris goes to the daycare and confronts Linda about what transpired. Linda explains that she isn't happy anymore, and while Chris can accept her decision to leave, he won't allow her to take their child, Junior. They agree to take turns caring for Junior. Without Linda's income, their financial situation worsens. When the landlord becomes fed up with Chris owing rent, he asks him to vacate the place as painters are scheduled to come. A few days later, while Chris is painting the walls, 2 policemen show up and take him to the police station to pay for all his outstanding parking tickets. Despite explaining that he has an interview the next morning, the officers insist he spends the night in jail. With his 1 phone call, Chris asks Linda to pick up Junior. The following morning, Chris is released but finds himself running late, so he rushes to the interview wearing shabby clothes. At the firm, the interview panel is disappointed by his appearance. However, Chris explains the situation, and Jay confirms that all the other times he saw Chris, he had been in proper attire. Despite the initial setback, Chris's humor, wit, and intelligence leave a positive impression on the panel. After the interview, Jay congratulates Chris, but he expresses reservations about accepting the internship due to his lack of salary and his changed circumstances. Jay encourages him to reconsider, assuring him that they will hold the spot for him. Later that evening, Linda arrives with Junior and shares big news. She's heading to New York because her sister's boyfriend is starting a restaurant, and she might have a job opportunity there. Chris surprises Linda by announcing that he will keep Junior with him, as he knows Linda can take care of him. After Linda's departure, Chris calls Jay and accepts the job offer. The next day, Chris and his son move to a nearby motel with the help of a friend. On a Saturday, Chris takes Junior to play basketball, and Junior expresses his dream of becoming a professional player. Later, they head to the hospital to offer the scanner, and finally make a sale, providing them with some much-needed money to stay afloat for a few more days. On Chris's first day at the internship, he works diligently and tries to prove himself as the best candidate, concealing the fact that he's struggling financially. During a lunch break, Chris unexpectedly encounters his boss, Mr. Frome, on the street. Hoping to make a good impression, he starts a conversation with him, but his attention is diverted when he notices the crazy guy with the scanner, still believing it's a time machine. Chris chases after him, leading to an accident where he gets hit by a car and loses a shoe. He returns to the office, pretending everything is fine. Over the following days, Chris continues to do favors for the office manager, Frakish, and makes numerous phone calls to attract clients, but with no success. The pressure increases as he has to complete his tasks in less time to pick up Junior from daycare. He works non-stop, neglecting breaks and personal needs. He also avoids the motel manager because of the money he owes. On weekends, he takes Junior with him to hospitals to try to sell his remaining scanners. One day, Chris decides to change his approach and takes a risk by making an out-of-order call. Surprisingly, he manages to secure an appointment with the top-level pension fund manager, Mr. Ribbon, who asks him to come to his office in 20 minutes. Unfortunately, Chris faces a parking issue, and despite rushing, he arrives too late, missing the meeting with Ribbon. The following morning, Chris visits Ribbon's house under the pretense of being in the area. He thanks Ribbon for the opportunity and apologizes once more. To cover up the situation, he pretends he will take Junior to a football game. Ribbon reveals that he's also taking his child and invites Chris and Junior to join them in his private box. In the weeks that follow, Chris continues to struggle, trying to balance his internship and the sales of the scanners. Desperate to find a solution, Chris approaches an old friend for a loan, only to discover that the friend already repaid the debt when Chris helped him move. One day, while at the park with his son, Chris encounters the crazy man with the scanner again. Determined to retrieve his machine, Chris chases after him and manages to reclaim it, although it's in poor condition. Despite his efforts to fix and sell it, the scanner doesn't work. Returning to the motel, they find their belongings outside, and the lock has been changed due to unpaid rent. Now homeless, Chris and Junior seek refuge at the train station for the night. In a moment of creativity, Chris tries to lift Junior's spirits by pretending that the scanner is a time machine, and they playfully imagine traveling to see dinosaurs. They decide to spend the night locked in the station's bathroom on a makeshift bed of toilet paper. Chris allows himself to cry, overwhelmed by their difficult situation. The next day, they attempt to find shelter at a homeless shelter, but are turned away because it's only for women and children. Through a tip, they locate another shelter, but the spots are limited, and there's fierce competition for the last few openings. Chris manages to secure the last available room by thwarting the efforts of someone trying to cheat their way in. While at the shelter, Chris uses whatever light is available to try to fix the scanner and study for his internship exam. He continues to work hard, bringing his possessions with him, and offering excuses to his coworkers about the bags he carries around. With the help of the contacts he made during his time at the firm, Chris brings in some clients for the brokerage. On the day of the internship exam, he manages to complete the test despite feeling nervous. Leaving the exam, he encounters his boss, Frome, who asks to borrow money for a cab. Despite his tight financial situation, due to the delay caused by lending Frome money, Chris and Junior end up sleeping on a train. The next day, Chris donates blood to earn some money, and uses it to buy a spare part for the scanner. This time, they make it to the shelter on time, and Chris finally manages to fix the machine. Chris ensures Junior that his mother's departure wasn't because of him and comforts him. They sell the scanner and spend a night at a hotel to lift Junior's spirits. On the weekend, they bond and enjoy time together at the beach. As Chris's internship comes to an end, he receives praise from his colleague Jay. Later, in Frome's office, he learns that he has secured the permanent position he desired. Frome gives Chris back the money he lent earlier, signifying his success. He picks up his son and embraces him tightly, embarking on a brighter future together. Eventually, the real Chris establishes his own successful brokerage firm, amassing wealth by selling his minority stake in the company. His inspiring journey is chronicled in a best-selling book detailing his extraordinary experiences.